Hi everyone, welcome back for our highly requested part 2 of exploring the importance of paper choice. If you haven't watched the first video, I highly recommend that you do that first, because in that one we look at how to print, and I also introduce the different ranges that are available from PermaJet. In today's video, we'll be picking back up where we left off last time and looking at other paper options that are available. I'm going to be using different images in today's video though, so that we can explore the different qualities of those images and how they might come across on the papers. I'm going to be using the Canon PRO-200 printer in this video, which is a dye-based printer, so we can also see how that might come across on the papers too. So let's go ahead and get printing. So today I have opted for portrait images because I want to show how skin tones can come across on the papers, and also how things like smooth or textured papers will affect printing portraits, because portraits is quite a common subject that a lot of photographers will be printing. So we have our first one here, which is a monochrome, and I've printed it on Gloss 271. So I've chosen Gloss 271 for the video today because gloss is obviously a very, very common paper choice for people. Often when people first start out printing, they will naturally go straight to a gloss paper because that is the paper that everybody knows. You know, you may not be aware of all the paper options out there, but everybody knows about gloss paper. You can walk into a supermarket and that will be what you'll see on the shelf. So we've gone for gloss, and this would never, ever be my first choice of paper, just because personally, I am not too keen on gloss papers. I think it's often a bit too shiny, a bit too much. But having said that, I think this image has printed beautifully on this paper, because the benefits of gloss is that it can achieve much more depth than a matte paper in terms of the blacks. You get much deeper blacks on the prints. You also get a lot more contrast as well. So I think for this image, where we've got the deep blacks in the background, we've got a lot of contrast and sort of detailed areas around the eyes, and they've worked really, really well on this paper. So it's printed lovely. But again, it wouldn't be my first choice of paper, just because I don't think it's very creative. So it's great for everyday things, of course, but I think there are a lot more creative options that can probably bring this image to life a little bit more. So we're going to look at those next. But firstly, I'm going to show you the colour image that we're going to be printing on today. This one, I have chosen this image because it doesn't have all the deep blacks like the other image does, so I thought it'd be a nice contrast. You've got a lot more smooth skin tones you're working with, a bit more of a tonal range to it, and also the nice vibrant colours. So I thought this would be a good tester image for the papers. So this one, in comparison to the monochrome, I don't love it as much. On Gloss 271, I think it's printed nice, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't have that kind of wow factor that I would want to see when printing an image, especially if you're the kind of person that's printing for competitions or for something to go on a wall. Then you want to have a bit more impact from the paper, and the paper, you have to remember, can really lift an image. It can add a lot more emotional impact to an image when you print it. And gloss, for me, it just doesn't really do that with this image. I think I've come out lovely, it's nice and sharp, but it just doesn't add anything to the image. So we'll go on and explore some other options now. So next up we have Lustre 310, which is from the digital photo range. I didn't mention earlier, but gloss is also from PermaJet's digital photo range. So Lustre, it kind of says it all in the name really, it's a luster paper. Lustre is kind of like a halfway point between gloss and matte, so it's still got that shiny surface to it, but it's not as in your face. It doesn't catch the light as much as a gloss paper does, so it's slightly less distracting, but you also still get that nice punch and contrast that you do with a gloss paper. So first up we have the monochrome image. It's come out really nice. The thing about Lustre is it's really good with deep punchy blacks like you can see in this picture, so it would be the kind of paper I would opt for something like this. Yeah, as I said, it's come out lovely. You've got a nice detail, it's nice and sharp, it's really eye-catching, it's got a lot of contrast to it. So yeah, I have no complaints about this one. I think it would be a good choice for this image. And then we have the colour one, which again, Lustre is really good with vibrant colours. So the flowers have printed really nice. You've got the nice kind of gradients in her skin tones, the vibrant makeup. I feel like with this one, the Lustre surface is perhaps a little bit distracting because you're catching the light when you look at it on this large area of skin tone. I would perhaps prefer a matte paper with this image, which we'll soon come on to. But again, it's come out really nice, and I would happily print this image on this paper. So the next paper that I'm going to be showing you is Titanium Gloss 300, which again is from the digital photo range. Now I wasn't actually going to be including this paper in the video today because we looked at a metallic paper in the first video, but when I saw the black and white image printed on the gloss paper, it actually made me want to see how it was going to come out on titanium gloss, because you've got the kind of the catch lights in the subject's eyes, and they've got a real nice shiny reflective look to them. And also just the way this monochrome image has been processed, it has a quality to it that I feel would be good on titanium gloss. I think the metallic base will really lift it. So here we have the titanium gloss print here. The face and the skin tones actually really pick up that metallic base. When you turn it in the light, you can really see the metallic coming through. And in particular, I feel that's because, as I mentioned at the start, we're printing on a dye-based printer, and dye ink actually absorbs into the paper as opposed to sitting on the surface, which is what pigment inks do. So you'll find with dye-based printers, you get a real benefit from printing on gloss papers because you really get a chance to see the paper base coming through the ink rather than ink sitting on the top. So in this case, I feel like the metallic base really shines through, and it makes it feel really creative and quite different. Now, in some lights, it could be perceived as bronzing, so you'd have to be quite careful. But if you were looking for something that was really going to pop and stand out, I think this would be a really good choice. And then again, with the colour image, it's come out quite unique. It's quite an odd choice because for a portrait, you wouldn't usually want to have metallic skin. I think it would be probably better suited to a slightly more creative portrait as opposed to a kind of studio shot. As when you turn it in the light, it really does catch on her skin, and as she's got quite a large surface area of skin, it's perhaps a bit distracting and looks a bit odd. But it really comes down to personal preference for this one, I think, because I quite like it, but I think there would be a lot of people who probably wouldn't like it so much. So now we are delving into the fibre-based variety range. First up we have FB Distinction 320. This paper has a bright white base and a subtle gloss surface to it. It's also one of the heaviest papers in PermaJet's range. So if we look first of all at the monochrome portrait, I love this, it's beautiful. You've got the really nice deep blacks, lots of sharp detail, which is when we would recommend going for the fibre-based variety range is when you want to print an image like this. This is a perfect example of something you would want to use this range for. So firstly, because it's a monochrome, because the fibre-based range is more suited to monochromes, because it can achieve wider tonal ranges. It's also more beneficial with images that have lots of sharp detail, lots of contrast, deep blacks. These are all the kind of features that work perfectly with this range of paper. So it's come out really nice. It's hard to describe without seeing it in person, but it just has more of a fine art feel to it than the other papers we were looking at. It just suits this image much better. It kind of feels right when you look at it. Going back again to the gloss print, which I really liked, but the gloss it's a lot shinier than the gloss on the FB Distinction, so that can be slightly distracting. And also the gloss 271 has a very smooth surface to it, whereas the FB Distinction, although it's a gloss, you can see if you look at it in the light, it has a kind of slight dimpled texture to the paper, which gives it that fine art feel to it. And it's come out really lovely, and it looks like the kind of thing you'd probably hang up in an exhibition. Now we have the colour image on FB Distinction, and again, it just feels a lot more right than the other papers. This paper has worked really nicely with the skin tones because, again, it's got that real subtle kind of texture to it, which gives the skin more of a realistic look, rather than it being like a kind of plasticky gloss look which the other gloss paper had. It feels more realistic. The skin tones look very natural. The colours have come out well. It's not too over the top and punchy. It's got a nice realistic natural look to it. Yeah, I think it's lovely. The bright white base as well has kind of accentuated the colours, but just subtly. It's not too much, so it's come out really nice. Next we have FB Pearl 300. I've chosen this one to kind of contrast with FB Distinction because Distinction has a really bright white base, whereas FB Pearl is a bit more of a warm, kind of neutral base to it. In terms of the surfaces, Distinction is more on the gloss side, whereas Pearl, as the name suggests, is more of a pearly, lustre, slightly flatter surface. So if I look at the monochrome first on FB Pearl, it's come out very similar to Distinction, to be honest. It's, again, very nice. You've got the really nice deep blacks, lots of contrast. I think the surface of this one works really nicely with this image. If I compare it to the Distinction, it's very subtle, so it's quite hard to see on camera. But you can definitely see how the base tints of the papers have affected the image. So the FB Pearl has a much warmer, slightly more of a yellowy feel to it. Really, when it comes to monochromes, it's going to be subjective and dependent on the person and how they want their image to come across, because a lot of the time you do want a monochrome image to have more of a warm feel to it, but sometimes you might want it to be a bit more of a stark, crisp white, in which case you would want to go for the Distinction. Overall, both have a very similar feel to them. It would probably be quite a hard choice, and it probably would just come down to the base tint of the paper. Looking at the colour image now, again, it's come out lovely. This image is actually one that we used on our swatches for FB Pearl at one point because it does print so nicely on this paper. FB Pearl is particularly nice for portraits because the surface and also the base tint work really nicely with these kind of warm skin tones and the colours in this kind of image. If I compare it to FB Distinction, there's not really a huge amount of difference. Again, it's very hard to see. It's quite subtle. If I hold it like I am now, I can see the light catching a lot more on Distinction because of the gloss. So if, for example, you were to be displaying an image, you might want to opt for FB Pearl because you're not going to catch the light on it as much as you are with the Distinction. But again, I think the bright white base of Distinction, it kind of lifts like the highlights on her skin a bit more than FB Pearl does. But FB Pearl works really nicely overall. So now we're moving on to the PermaJet fine art range. So we've got Portrait White 285, which is one of the smooth fine art papers. It's got quite a bright white base in comparison to the other fine art papers, and a very subtle texture to the surface, but it's bordering more on the smooth side. If we look at the monochrome image printed on this paper, I don't know how to feel about it actually, because I feel like in isolation it looks great. The blacks again are very deep and velvety. I feel like the slight texture of the paper really picks out the textures of the man's skin. Works really nicely with, the slight wrinkles he's got around his eyes and all the freckles and the details of his skin. It works really nicely with that, and it adds to the feel of the image, the kind of emotional feel it has to it. It gives it that depth because there's no reflection on the surface. However, if I compare it to something like the Gloss 271, I much prefer the gloss, because comparing the blacks, the blacks on the gloss are really, really deep in comparison. And I feel like when you compare the two, the Portrait White actually looks very flat, and the gloss in comparison has almost like a 3D look. So the man is almost standing off the page. You're looking at his nose, it looks 3D. You can see the shadows on the nose. They really stand out on this one, whereas on the Portrait White, they do feel a bit lost and flat. So I think as we always say, it comes down to what you want to achieve with the particular image that you're printing. So if you're going for something that you do want to have that kind of subtle, subdued look, but it has the depth and it pulls you in, and it kind of portrays something, it gets a message across if it's a textured image, or if you want to go for something that has that real wow factor when you look at it, it really punches you in the face and it stands out, then that is when you probably go for this option. So it really does come down to what you want to achieve with the image that you're printing. So it's a hard choice, that one, because there's benefits to both of them, and there's sort of downsides to both of them as well. So then if we go on to the colour image, that one for me is definitely a no. I think this image is more of a punchy studio shot. It's not something I would put on a fine art paper. It has printed nicely, don't get me wrong. You know, the skin tone looks lovely. It's come out really, really nice. Again, the slight texture of the paper kind of adds to the realism of her skin, because it's not too much, it's just got that really slight dimple to it. And the colours have come out nice as well, but again, it looks quite flat because matte papers don't tend to be as punchy as gloss papers. It's just not how they work. And again, it could also be down to us using a dye-based printer as well, because dye inks notoriously aren't as good with fine art papers. If you wanted to print on gloss papers, then a dye printer is a great choice. If you're looking to print on fine art papers all the time, then actually a pigment ink printer, you're probably going to get better results. But overall, yeah, it wouldn't be one I would choose for this image. The last paper I'm going to be showing you today is Smooth Rag 310, which is from the Heritage range. It's, as the name says again, a smooth fine art paper. It's got a kind of neutral warm base with a very, very smooth surface. It's also 100% cotton rag, so it's a very high quality paper. So we have the monochrome here on Smooth Rag. It's quite really nice actually, I really like this one. I think the smooth surface does actually in fact work better for this than the textured surface, particularly in the black areas. It's not distracting. It's come out really nice and punchy. Lots and lots of sharp detail. The eyes really kind of pull you in because there's no distractions. It's just got that really nice feel to it. Yeah, I think overall it's a lovely, lovely print. And if I wanted to achieve more of a fine art, high quality feel with this image, then I would probably opt for this paper. Now the colour print has also come out really nice. It's, again, I think the smooth surface works better than the texture of the portrait white because you're getting no distractions across this wide area of skin. It's just got a really nice smooth feel to it. Again, colours have come out lovely. It's got a bit of contrast to it. It's got a really nice high quality feel to hand as well. And yeah, it doesn't have as much impact as the slightly glossier papers, but it has printed really, really nice. So to wrap up the video, I'm going to be doing the same as last time and telling you which of the papers produce my favourite prints today. So for the monochrome image, I think it would have to be FB Distinction. I think this one just printed beautifully. It achieved that kind of fine art feel that I wanted to achieve with this image, especially because Distinction has such a heavy feel in hand. It's got a really nice quality feel to it, but it also retains the kind of benefits of a gloss paper. So it has that really nice punchy, deep blacks, the kind of sharp details, which you sometimes lose with the matte fine art papers. So it achieves kind of the best of both worlds, which I think for this image is perfect. However, saying that, the titanium gloss was a close call because I just think this one's different. It's got a really nice creative feel to it. I love how the metallic really, really shows through on his skin. I think it would be a niche choice because, as I said earlier, a lot of people might not like it. But I think if it was something you were maybe entering into a competition and you wanted it to really stand out, then this would be a really good choice. But yeah, I think both, again, you know, it comes down to what the print is going to be used for and personal preference. Those two factors are really going to help you make your choice when it comes to paper. And also just something to note as well is you may have noticed that some of the monochrome prints do look different in tone. And that's partly down to the paper base and the whiteness. And it's also partly due to the fact that I've been using black and white photo mode, which does require a bit of tweaking. Monochromes can be very finicky when you print them because you do sometimes get a color cast from the inks. So it's something where you have to sometimes play around a little bit and, you know, add a bit more warmth or take away a little bit of warmth until you get the result that you want to achieve. But these two have actually come out quite similar, and I think they're both really beautiful prints. And then finally, the colour print. So again, I narrowed it down to 2 choices, which is the FB Pearl and the Smooth Rag. They both look very similar, but the Smooth Rag would be my choice if I wanted to maybe hang it on the wall, because you've got that, there's no shine to it. It's got the very matte feel. And then the FB Pearl, I think, just works really nicely. You've got the slightly more vibrant colours, slightly deeper blacks, but overall it's a really, really lovely print. And yeah, it's a hard choice between those two because, as I said, they are very similar but just have slightly different qualities to them. So I hope this video has been helpful for you, and again has reiterated that paper choice is not only very subjective and down to personal preference, but it's also really important because an image can really be influenced by the paper that you're printing it on. So if you're struggling to choose a paper, you really need to think about that particular image, which qualities of the image you want to enhance, which ones that you want to stand out more, and then that should hopefully help you narrow down your choices when it comes to paper, because you really want to look for the qualities of the paper that are going to make those parts of the image stand out. For example, the smooth matte surface, or the metallic really bringing out the creative side of the image. Let me know in the comments which was your favourite print today, and also let us know if you have any questions. You can also get in touch with PermaJet directly and we'll be happy to help you.